Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining the conversation today. We are thrilled to be back together recording and to be with you. And as always, Alana and I love imagining each one of you listening to our episode today and feeling a part of the conversation. Today's topic is one that I think, if anything, is just going to hold a lot of validation, at least for me, where I'm coming from with this, is validating how this happens when we go through betrayal. And that is when we lose our sense of worth or value, whether that's as a wife, a mother, a woman in general. I think it hits, at least it did for me. I'll speak for myself. It hit every aspect of my life in that way with betrayal. And once more pieces of reality that came to my cognitive awareness, I definitely felt another layer of my world get hit. And when I say hit, like in question, I questioned who I was in all of it. And we hear that a lot, Alana, with the clients. I don't know who I am anymore. I don't know what I like anymore, what I feel anymore. Just really so depleting. And if anything today, we hope to validate that's part of, unfortunately, this experience of trauma. We hope by the end of the episode to give you a couple things to look towards in sense of reclaiming your value after betrayal. And I'll just start by saying that it is possible. I've shared this story probably way too many times. It stands out right now as I'm saying this, because when you are in a state where it feels hopeless and you don't know if you're ever going to reclaim your sense of worth or value, if you're ever going to know yourself again, or am I ever going to have joy again? I had someone very early in my journey who did not know me, but knew my body, knew like what my body was presenting, knew how me sitting hung over crying, like when I say hung over, like my body hunched over, should clarify, I wasn't hung over from drinking, although that would have been nice, but hunched over, crying, just my whole entire body language, my aura, my energy state. She read, she knew because she'd been there. And she walked over to me without knowing my story. And she just looked at me and said, I promise it gets better. And I hung on to that for years. And so that's what I want to say is that if you are in this space where you don't know who you are anymore, you feel worthless and hopeless, I promise it gets better. Hang in there, keep doing the work on you, and you will be able to reclaim that. But let's validate, Alana, maybe why this happens. Why is this part of the impact of betrayal trauma? Why is losing our sense of worth and value an impact of trauma?
So when we go through an emotional trauma, it's very similar to going through a physical trauma. So it's your brain reads the same as if you had a massive concussion and you go through a betrayal. And when you have this massive, I'm going to call it a concussion for a minute, you have this massive concussion, this massive injury that happens, there's effects across the board in multiple areas. One of the effects that actually happens is we have this disconnect from our sense of reality and our sense of self. And Hope Ray talks about this, and you did an episode on this on the reality collapse, like what we knew and what we understand or stood, like that rug was ripped out from under you. Reality collapses. I don't know why that word sounded funny. Collapses down, and all of a sudden you're left with this not knowing which way is up and not knowing which way is your sense. But then you add that extra element of attachment in there where this injury, it's not like you had an injury from just somebody you knew or a friend. It was your primary attachment. And so then that sense of where I went for my security is gone. And the one person who was supposed to keep me safe didn't keep me safe. So not only do we have that reality collapse, not only does trauma cause that disconnect from the sense of self, But then we have that extra layer of attachment that we don't know who to turn to or who to go to get that balancing and that co-regulation to know it's okay. So you're hit. And that's not even talking about like the emotional impacts, the sexual impacts, right?
Yeah.
It it's such a deep impact. And going back to this idea of like trauma inherently separates us from our sense of knowing ourselves. This happens when there's a rape. This happens when there's a really bad car accident and you're left with PTSD. This is what the brain does. And like you said, it can be healed, just like a concussion can be healed, but it impacts us at such an emotional and physical level.
Yeah. And then this intrinsic level where truly who we are is 100% of worth and value, enough, lovable. But our belief and our thoughts about that get impacted and shifted because of what you're saying there. And that's hard to believe right there. Can we talk about just what I said? Because I know that was very difficult for me to believe, mostly because of how I was brought up and a lot of the religious scrupulosity or spiritual bypassing, misunderstanding in my religion added to this as well for me. But I don't know about you, but sometimes when I will tell my client, like, well, hold on a second, your human experience that you're having with this betrayal actually doesn't take away your worth and value. It can't. Your intrinsic worth and value is inherent, it's fixed, it's separate from your human brain, human body, and human emotions, the experience that you're having in that body. That it alone, I just want to validate, can be like, what? Really hard to conceptualize at first because it was for me, because it all felt like, well, no, how I, how my goodness, whether I'm good, kind, being better was so important to me. No, I needed to be a better wife, a better mother, a better person, a better friend. And if I mess up or if I'm not, then that makes me less. I was really stuck in that space. So it made sense to my brain and this part of me that believed this, that if this person could treat me in this way, then I must be doing something wrong. And so, for example, I wasn't pretty enough, sexy enough, sexual enough. It made me question my enoughness because I believed that how I behaved or what I did or didn't do is what made me whole and complete. Is that making sense? I'm saying that.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And here's where my brain is going is this is so complex and layered because like I had a really good sense of self. And I remember sitting in my therapist's office and I'm like, this is not about me. This is truly about his choices. And there was a part of me that so deeply believed that and knew that.
Mhm.
And yet there was still another part of me because I was like, no, it's not about not having enough sex. No, it's not about like I was like, I'm not taking that crap on. But there was another part of me, and it was this really deep part of like, why wasn't I enough?
Yeah.
Why wasn't I enough that you could just love me? And so I could logically go there in one place, one part of me, but then I would have other parts that would show up. And it's interesting. So I went to this leadership retreat last week and we were looking at these limiting beliefs. And at one point, this woman who was doing coaching with me, she said something like, it sounds like what you're saying is at some level, you didn't believe you were worth being treated better. And I was like, no, I don't think that's right. I think it's this thing over here. And she kind of let me have that. But then I went and I like really sat with that and I went deeper with that and I went deeper with that. And because of this, like at different levels, I do believe I have a lot of worth. It was hard for me to get down to those deeper levels and layers to really see. And I think I had some projectors around that to really see some of these deeper pieces. And so as you're listening, I really want you to look at yourself and use that part's lens of what parts are showing up here. I have a part that goes, no, I deserve to be treated better. This isn't okay. I have a part that says, I am of worth and value. I have a part that says, man, if I would have just, could I have, make space for all those different parts because they're all real and valid. And a lot of times we don't know which one's going to show up at any given moment.
Yeah. I love that you broke it down that way. And I think that's such a beautiful way that we can all stay curious and open to how we're showing up by seeing the different parts and different ways that we show up. When you were sharing that, it makes sense to me too that we can show up and have multiple beliefs, especially given the reality fragmentation that we're experiencing, where if you don't have all of the information, if we're still living in a lot of untruth or again, fragmented realities, or we don't have some answers, you don't have some pieces of that puzzle, yet there's still some unknowing, there's still some parts that we know need to be filled, gaps that need to be filled. That is when our brain does go to work to fill them. And if it can't find anything outside, like cognitively, then it just turns against ourselves. And it's not trying to be mean, it's trying to do what a brain does and fill in the pieces. And so oftentimes that can be happening too, where, like you said, you can, on one hand, believe that you deserve better. But if we're living in fragmentation because we still don't have truth, our brain is like, yeah, and we don't have an answer to this. So guess what? You might be the problem.
And part of that too, you're exactly right. And part of that too is that concept of betrayal blindness,
Yeah.
where your brain is trying to protect the attachment, which is the relationship, right? Your brain
Yeah.
is trying to protect the relationship. And so it will go through loops to try to make the relationship okay so you can feel okay. And you're right. Like I see women do this all the time of like, not only are we looking at ourselves of, okay, it must be me, I must have done something, but another way that I see it happen is this subconscious belief that if I'm the problem, then I can fix it.
Oh, heck to the yes.
We take it on as I'm the problem, then we go to get fixing it, hoping
Mhm.
to fix the relationship
Mhm.
instead of letting reality be what it is. And I'm not saying
Right.
that individuals who are betrayed don't have their own issues and don't have their own stuff that they should work on. We all have our stuff we should work on. We use that as an excuse of our partner's poor behavior or choices.
Mhm.
That's where we get really problematic.
For sure. For sure. I see this show up with boundaries too, in the sense of if boundaries aren't being respected or if there's any pushback on a boundary that you're communicating, you know what, it's not, this isn't okay with me. If you're receiving, again, any kind of pushback and that feels threatening, scary, their emotional response to that is, again, going to threaten that attachment that you're talking about. I see that also create this backpedaling. Oh, shoot, maybe I'm asking too much, or maybe I'm expecting too much, or maybe I'm, again, as a way to hold on to the attachment. But I really like how you validated that too, because I can so relate to that. A way to stay in control. And here's the thing is, we've mentioned this before, it can work for a short period of time. I say short, even a couple years, a few years, decades, it can, quote, work,
The temporary.
but it is not long term and it's still fragmented. When we say working, I'm air quoting if you can't see me on YouTube. It's still quote working, but as I can look back, hindsight 2020, it was working, but I was split apart. I was still working against my higher self, my internal knowing, my body. So that can only last so long before we have impact on that as well, whether that's autoimmune disease, chronic pain, illness, those types of things as well. So it's not sustainable. It's not healthy. One of the things I love starting with when I'm walking clients through betrayal trauma healing is this basic foundational understanding. I'll draw out those circles, 4 circles. I know it's way more nuanced than this, but I like the visual of just, okay, hold on a second. Foundationally, I just need to see myself in these parts right here. And I have your worth and value on the top left. And I have your brain, your body, and your emotions. And I will take a circle and I will outline all, encompass the brain, body, and emotions, then there's your circle of worth and value, enoughness, lovability. And it's separate. Who you are is separate from your human experience. And just that visual for me and practicing to see myself that way can really be a great foundational way to start wrapping your head around what we're talking about. Because to your point, it's layered. Even in that human experience, we have so many other parts, but I like starting somewhere with just this basic foundational understanding of, I remember my therapist telling me your trauma didn't impact your higher self. It impacted your brain, your body, and your emotions, parts of you, right? But it didn't take away from that 100%. It can't. I remember that just blowing my brain. Just, wait, what? For me, I did not believe that, what she was saying. I'm like, for so many reasons. But when I really let myself lean into that idea, it made sense to me. And it helped me see that I can heal. It helped me believe that I can recover. It helped me believe that I am lovable. I didn't deserve this because unlike you, I thought I did. Like I must have done something in my past. I must have done something wrong. I must have screwed up somewhere to deserve this. Like that's where I was at. So this concept really blew my mind. It helped me when I could get that foundation back under my feet.
I love that. As you broke that down with the circles and that being separate, what your therapist said, it made me really think about how this idea, I don't even know if I call it an idea, but this like belief that we're like broken can be really problematic long term if we take that on. I validate that you feel broken, but you're not actually broken. There's parts of you that are injured. There's parts of you that need healing. I love separating that worth, and that is whole and complete. And there's a part of you that does stay whole and complete, and to hold on to that. I heard a quote the other day and it said, where your brain goes, the energy flows. I really thought that was beautiful because I think about if you're taking on this, I'm broken, I'm worthless, I don't have value. If these are the thoughts that we're feeding ourselves, those will continue to feed that energy around us. And that does not age or healing. But
Right.
when we can just own, I have been injured and I am healing, and there's a part of me that is whole and complete and untouched, how much more empowered we are to do the healing we need to do.
Oh, absolutely. And that healing is an inside out approach, not an outside in. And that's the shift also that I see needs to happen when we're navigating betrayal, just navigating life. Cause I think the world in general is set up this way with this outside in approach. We're really looking, what I mean by that is we're looking for external things to validate that worth and value. Like I was saying before, that was my mindset. That was my belief. What I did on the outside, or even how people in my life showed up, or what they did or didn't do, how I performed, whether it's school, a sport, anything, you name it. If it's external, it can't mean anything about your internal worth or value. So if we're trying to, okay, like you're listening to us, you're like, okay, I can totally relate. Now, what do I do? Be very mindful of what we are trying to use or hold on to validate that sense of worth and value. For example, if our partner is doing well, let's say they're in recovery, say things are going good, and you're like, he's honoring my boundaries. He's honoring my boundaries right now. He's doing his work, all the things. This might be very subconscious, but we can make that also mean something about our worth and value, enoughness, and lovability. So just, it can be very subtle. Like you were saying, your coach caught on to something very subtle and it took you a minute to go, oh, there it is. It can happen like that. That's why you'll hear Alana and I say all the time, like, we need to do our individual work first, that we can get on our own side of the street, because oftentimes we're not aware of how much we are making those external things or person external mean something about our worth and value. So we have to be mindful of that too.
Well, and I'm going to give a couple of examples. One that I would do, and I didn't realize I did this till years later, but one that I would do is if he held my pain, then I felt like I was of worth and value.
Mm,
If he validated my pain, if he would hold it, if he would go and do something hard, like take a polygraph, then I would feel like I had worth and value.
Mm.
Where worth and value does not change on what your partner does or does not do. And
Yeah,
that's a
I've heard
really,
that says, am I not worth loving? Like I totally said this too. If you do then, and if you don't do then am I not worth loving? Am I not worth the work? Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, like even my partner's working recovery or not working recovery, that will be all the time that is internalized. Or like you said, like with boundaries, if they respond poorly, they don't like my boundaries, then it becomes what's wrong with me that they don't like my boundaries
Mhm.
versus that's just really their own experience they're having separate of you.
Yeah.
So I see all of these little subtle ways that we're tying our worth and our value and looking to other people to tell us what it is.
Yeah. It's easy to do when we feel lost and safe. It's easy to do when we are doubtful about who we are, what we are, our worth, all of it. And so it makes sense why we're searching so desperately sometimes to seek for that external. It's an inside job, inside out job. And it takes time and it takes practice. And anytime I'm working with someone specifically on this, that's one thing I will say over and over is we need to slow down with this. It's not something to rush. The way that my brain works sometimes with helping clients is it's like I have in my head these basic foundational tools or principles that have to be when you look at a house or think of a house being built, like we have to make sure that foundation is sturdy. I'm in a fairly new neighborhood, and so a lot of houses going up. And I was surprised at how long they let that cement sit, that foundation sit and settle before they start putting more and more layers on top of that. I can validate how sometimes we don't like the idea of slowing down and we want to just get this shit over with, get this pain over with, move it along, build the damn house back up. But there's a purpose and a very good reason why they need to let that cement and that foundation sit and settle and even crack a little bit because then we can breathe. So I think just that visual alone, this is going to take time and it's supposed to. Doesn't mean that we're not going to get to the destination or build the building that I know you want to build. So slow this down. I know we're throwing a lot out there, but this is a foundational principle. We don't rush this work.
Yeah. So, what this I'm hearing you say, Amy, is like there is a certain level of that psychoeducation of learning about the worth and value. Then there is this piece in therapy of really like recognizing some of those deeper beliefs, those core beliefs and where they came from, and
Mhm.
plucking out those at the root. So going back and figuring out what they are, where they came from, because they're running in your subconscious, moving those out. If you have past, and everybody does to some level, but past childhood beliefs around your worth and value, when you go through betrayal, it amplifies them. And so, really going in, so first learning those tools, going in and plucking out those weeds, then allowing time for all of this to happen. I remember in my healing work, there was about a year and a half where this was just the focus of my work. It's funny because I say that, and I know some of you are like, I'm sorry, what? But it's happening in all of the other work, but it is that focus of, no, I want to not only believe that I have value, but know and
Yeah.
feel and access and stand in that and be in that place of empowerment. And so I love that you just said, yeah, healing takes time. This one is not something where you read a book and then you're like, all right, good, I got value.
And the truth is, on the other side of the street, this has to be happening as well. There's a concept called differentiation. And that's what we're talking about when we say we each need to get on our own side of the street a little bit, because we have to cultivate that our own sense of self in order to be able to take up that beautiful interdependent space in our couple bubble when we come back together in that shared space. The space has to be different. The way we take up that space has to be different. And if we can cultivate our own sense of self, then we can connect in the way that you hear Alana and I talk about all the time, where it's not codependent, it's not enmeshed, it's that more secure attachment style. So, again, that's why this is so foundational, because your sense of self, and that means your worth, your value, your enoughness is so important to have a view of in this healthy way that we're talking about. You might be doing the work, you might be cultivating that, and your partner isn't. It is still problematic. I mention this because I'll have clients sometimes think that they can do all of the work in that space if they cultivate this and they are feeling better. They are doing the work. They are getting a healthier sense of self. They are starting to believe differently about their lovability, their enoughness. They're not blaming as much. But when their partner isn't doing that work, I do sometimes see this idea that they can make up the difference on that other side of the street. And so I just want
Which
to
is a
point out,
temporary fix. Again,
right?
like that
Yeah.
can last you for a season, which could be a week, a month, a couple of years,
Hmm.
but it will come crashing down at some point. To have a healthy, secure foundation and relationship takes two individuals, like you said, who are autonomous, who can stand on their own 2 feet, and then can come connect together as their own individual and then interconnect.
Yeah. So as we wrap up, just a couple things that I think, okay, again, what do I do with this? Y'all, working with someone, I will just say again, working with a professional who understands the impact of betrayal, trauma, and how this injury impacts your sense of self and worth is helpful, crucial, because it is sneaky. Like you were just saying, sometimes it can sneakily show up on us. So having someone be able to help point out where it might be sneaky to you, understanding your intrinsic worth and value, then it will help you to start build confidence in your choices when you do that. It's just like when you take a beaver puts all these logs and builds a dam in the river and it stops that flow. When you start to pull the logs and all of that debris out of that beaver dam, the water, the river just naturally flows. That's how I see our sense of confidence and connectivity and courage, confidence, all those beautiful 8 characteristics of the higher self. Like when you get that foundation piece in place, it's like the rest just flows like the river once you remove that dam, is the visual that I have that we're talking about here. And so you don't necessarily have to do more work. There is a lot that naturally happens as a result of this deeper work. Those of you who are struggling with boundaries, if you're struggling and you're like, I'm trying all the things, I'm reading all the books, but it's still not working, I would bet that if we started to do some work on this core foundational piece, that boundaries also will naturally flow.
Mhm. That's such a great visual. I use that even in, I did some coaching, like business coaching.
Mm,
Before we even got into some of the day to day business stuff, it was around the self worth and me valuing my time and me having boundaries and knowing where I wanted to give that energy because of how I value myself. And that was it. That was just removing those logs so the energy could flow. And then how easily the rest of the answers came for the business once I removed some of the logs that were blocking. Yeah,
yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. Okay. A couple journal prompts for those of you that want to take this a step further. What does my partner's reaction say about them, not me? So noticing how we're flipping the narrative here, the self meaning, we're keeping it on their side of the street. What does their reaction, whether that's to my boundaries or whatever, say about them, not me? And then how do my actions align with my values, regardless of their response? How do my actions align with my values, regardless of their response? Those are your 2 journal prompts that you can start doing some of this deeper intrinsic work.
I love it. Hopefully, this resonated with you. Notice which parts resonate and what speaks to you, and start there. You
Yeah.
don't have to have all the pieces or all the answers today. Just put one foot in front of the other. We're proud of you. We're proud of the work that you're doing, and just keep going. We're cheering you on. As always, thanks for hanging out with Amie and I, and we look forward to seeing you all next week.
I am so excited that you're considering joining me for the Body Awakened Brain Spotting Intensive this April. I want to take a moment to share why I created this intensive and why I believe it could be a really powerful next step in your healing. First of all, I 100% believe that the body keeps the score. Trauma isn't just something that happens to us emotionally. It's stored deep within the body, often for far longer than we realize. While our mind may be trying to process and move forward, the body can remain stuck, holding on to pain, fear, and a lot of those shock responses to the trauma that you've experienced. For many of us, disconnecting from our body was once a form of self-protection and helped us survive. But the longer we stayed disconnected, the more we experience chronic stress, anxiety, burnout, and even physical conditions like autoimmune disease, chronic pain, and illness. That's why this intensive exists, to help you reconnect to your body in ways that you may have never done before. One of the most profound lessons that I've learned, not only from my own healing, but from supporting hundreds of women through betrayal trauma and these deep emotional wounds, is this: your brain and body know what and when to heal. No one can force your healing, but we can create a space for that to happen. And that's what the intensive is all about, creating the space and the time and the right environment for your healing to unfold naturally. This isn't just another workshop, another coaching session, or another therapy session to add to your list. This is a dedicated space for your body to finally exhale, release, and begin integrating what it's been holding on to. During this intensive, you can expect 3 full days of deep embodied healing in a small, intimate group. We're going to have daily body experientials, guided exercises designed to help you reconnect with your central nervous system, with your physical body, with your emotions, all of the things. Brain spotting sessions will happen twice a day. Each one of you will have your own full brain spot session, plus being able to witness and support others in their own healing, which there is absolute power in healing as a collective. Healing doesn't happen in isolation. So being witnessed and held in a safe, supportive community is profoundly powerful and can actually expedite your healing. One of the biggest misconceptions maybe about this intensive or even in healing is that you have to come prepared with something specific to work on. You don't. In fact, I encourage you to trust that during this intensive, your body and brain will guide you, revealing what needs to be processed, released, and reclaimed in that moment. If this speaks to you, don't wait. This is a small, intensive group and registration closes soon. I believe your body is not a problem to be fixed. It is a story to be heard, a home to return to, and a guide to trust. Your healing is waiting. Your body is ready. Are you ready to listen? I will see you soon.
Hi, my name is Hallie Roderick with Choose Recovery Services. And if you're a woman healing from betrayal trauma and you find yourself feeling stuck or experiencing overwhelming triggers, having a difficult time trusting yourself, or even thinking about trusting others, or having a hard time understanding what healthy boundaries are, how to hold those, I want to invite you to consider joining us at our upcoming Courage to Thrive Intensive, held on April 23rd through 26th in Spanish Fork, Utah. These intensives are one of my favorite things to be a part of because healing happens in community. There's just something different that happens when you're in person with other women who maybe your stories aren't exactly the same, but there's a mutual understanding and a safety that is created by being in a common community. So if this sounds like something that would be beneficial to you, please check the show notes, reach out to our office to get more information, and come see us in Utah on April 23rd through 26th. We'd love to have you join us.
I'm very excited to tell you about the Unmasked Intensive we have coming up in May. It's May 13th through the 16th in Spanish Fork, Utah. The name of the intensive is Unmasked Paths to Authentic Masculinity. Let me tell you some of the things we're going to accomplish. We're going to explore some root causes, like at the end of the day, what's underneath this behavior? What's the why behind it? What's the insights into understanding why my behavior existed, the one that kept me in secrecy and hiding? We're going to embrace vulnerability. So we're going to confront a lot of the struggles of that non-judgmental space so you can foster more authentic connections with the people that you love. We're going to realign with your values. We're going to learn new coping strategies, and we're going to forge some authentic connection. We're going to build a lot of camaraderie to hear that happens. I wanted to share with you what previous participants have said about this transformation. So here's what one guy said. I'm just going to read it to you. I loved the connection with those around me. It was eye-opening to learn how to open up and show love for myself and be okay with what's going on inside of me, no matter how hard or ugly I may see it. I specifically remember this man saying this and just being astounded by like, wow, if I'm around people that really open up, what can I explore and learn about myself in this intensive? He found it to be really eye-opening. So anyway, for more information and reserve your spot, go ahead and visit our website and we'll provide some information for you. And then take the time to invest in yourself so you can start to lean in a more authentic way in your life. Looking forward to seeing you there.